and security. On the program today, I will be hanging out with Babajide Kolade Otitoju and Mojid Jamil. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome to the program.
Welcome back.
I said Mojid, welcome to the program.
Good evening. How are you?
All right, Journalist Hangout starts now. Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Almost 6 months after the Abuja-Kaduna train passengers were kidnapped by Boko Haram terrorists, the remaining 23 kidnapped victims have finally regained their freedom. The cheering news was broken yesterday by Usman Yusuf, Secretary Chief of Defense Staff, Action Committee, CDSAC. The victims were released at 4 p.m. yesterday. And meanwhile, at least 30 people, mostly women and children, fleeing attack on Beniwaji community in Bukuyum local government area of Zamfara state, have lost their lives after canoes they boarded capsized and drowned in the river. Firstly, let's talk about the released abductors. Bikil, 6 months in captivity. This is good news for all of us, especially the family of these victims.
Yes, when you bear in mind the trauma that these people have gone through, if you have a friend amongst the victims or your friend is related to a victim, you appreciate the pains, the mental agony that these people have been put through. Everyone knows that this thing happened just before the rainy season began in the north. And when it begins to rain in the north, it's always heavy. These guys were left in the open. It's not as if they were put in a 0-star hotel or something, just left out there. Some fell sick. And these bandits were extremely cruel and even wicked in demanding for ransom. You know, a businessman can be shrewd, he can be determined, he can be hard-nosed in negotiating, even among football clubs. They will tell you, Borussia Dortmund, when it comes to negotiating with them, you have to be careful. They want to get every bit of the money on you. That's just the way those bandits were. Taking 100 million from each person. The Pakistani that they abducted along with the other Nigerians paid even more. So if anyone comes to tell you, oh, those guys, they released, you remember what they were saying back then, that they released somebody because of age. And I've told Nigerians, my own friend, whose mother is 90 years, was not released. You release somebody in his early 60s, so, I mean, you said you released him on account of age, but you didn't release an old woman. So, for the pains that the people have gone through, there is no news as good as hearing that they've been released, that they are now back in Kaduna, where I think the president would even pay them a visit. You know what we've gone through? A cleric even abused our president the way I've not seen any Nigerian abuse the president. People won't know because he was speaking Hausa. Well, if you understand Hausa, I've never seen anybody do a video abusing the president the way a cleric abused our president. After they released the video of those guys flogging the abductees. As I said earlier, we are happy to hear that these guys, that this whole agony has come to an end. And on the good side, at least the moral problem that ensured that they did not even return to selling tickets keeping that Kaduna Abuja rail corridor active. At least they can now go back to do that, because when you take loans for infrastructure, the money you keep paying. You're paying whether you keep the rail active or not. You must pay. So I'm happy, and I'm not bothered about how this last 23 they were released. I don't even need anybody to tell me any story. I'm just happy that we have been able to put this nonsense behind us, this agony behind us. So whichever way that committee led by Yusuf was able to secure their release, I'm happy to hear that they have been released.
All right, MJ. In total, over 60 persons were captivated from that attack. And reports usually have it, like Vicky already said, over 1 million, some 200 million. Some reports even had it that 500 million were paid on some victims. Do we regard this as the new normal?
Yeah, it's like I said earlier. During a chat with a friend, it's rather unfortunate that we have to keep talking about this. None of those 67 or 68 captives paid less than 100 million. That's like the average. And when you think, for those of us who are here, it's easy for us to sit down and analyze these things. But even put yourself in a position where you are unable to have a change of clothes for 2 or 3 days. These people, for the past 6 months and a few days, they've not been able to change their clothes. Like Jide said, they have been, you can't even sit the way you want to sit. They have been in the open, like cattle in a ranch. For the past, or since March 28th. Yes. September 28th, it was 6 months exactly on September 28th. So I want to believe that the government and the security operatives are able to learn one lesson on the other from this particular incident. Well, we thank God, all of them are back. And I think I want to appeal that they put some of them through a rehabilitation process where they will have some people to manage their psyche, you know. No, let's even forget about the revenue loss as a result of the shutdown of that lucrative train service between Abuja and Kaduna. Let's forget about the revenue loss. I think they run about 2 or 3 ships per day. And since, for more than 6 months now, I mean, 3 times 6, that's more than 180 days, nothing has happened. I mean, so the revenue that we are losing, then how much is being paid to get our people released, even the businesses of these people would have suffered while in that place. So what we need to do is to prevent a recurrence, because the people who do this kind of things, what they do is to target another. I mean, they will relax, and while we think everything has died down, they'll strike again. And from all indications, I think our security operatives should plan towards Christmas, beef up security in major areas, and also towards the elections, because these characters, they will go out now and start enjoying their loot while they plan. I mean, by the time the loot is going down, they plan for another attack. I pray that we don't have this kind of calamity in our hands going further.
Amen. Mikhail, another sad happening in Zamfara state where over 30 persons have lost their lives while trying to flee from bandits.
Yes, largely women and children. You know, the boat in which they were trying to escape capsized, and we lost them. You see, That is evidence that no matter the level of improvement, that is what I always say here. Some people think, oh, he doesn't want to praise the security agencies. But I don't know any Nigerian alive who has done documentaries praising the armed forces more than I've done. There's no such Nigerian. I've not seen that Nigerian. But my own obligation to my God is to speak the truth. My loyalty is to the truth. And I keep saying that no matter the level of improvement that we have recorded, we should acknowledge that there is still a lot of work to be done. We must acknowledge that we are dealing with dangerous people who would not want to give up their pastime because they are making a lot of money from this. Their sponsors are making a lot of money. When they collect ransom, do you know that this ransom that they collected from the train passengers, family members, were submitted to them in dollars, are delivered to them in dollars? They will tell you, go and change that 100 million to dollars. They are not ready to take it in cash. They don't have the time to be carrying bags so that they will be staggering as they are walking. No, it's dollars, and they will tell you, don't use the same. No. That you too will not try it. Don't exchange the money in one place. So that means you have to go to two different or more brood exchange people, so that is what they are doing. And then they will now take the money across our border so that they can go and buy weapons in the black market. They'll cross the border on foot. They'll cross. So this is what is happening now. They are not going to give up that kind of business easily. We have to tell ourselves the truth. So no matter the improvement in Zamfara that we are happy to announce and all that, this is evidence that danger still lurks. On market days in Zamfara, ask anybody who is in Zamfara, you know that on market days, your heart is in your mouth. Those returning after going to transact business, they are usually abducted. There's a story that is coming. The Nigerians will be surprised that I did the last time I went there. So the threat has not ended. Let nobody tell us. I've heard stories that, oh, by December, insecurity will end in our country. Really? Really? I think the only way that can happen is if those guys on their own just say, okay, we are giving up. But we can't kill all of them between now and December. All right. That's a fact. So we just have to remain vigilant and ensure that we take them out as much as we can.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. The Court of Appeal in Abuja has challenged the federal government and the striking academic staff union of universities, ASUU, to resolve their dispute amicably out of court. Justice George Will Abraham threw the challenge when the federal government and ASUU appeared before him for hearing in the appeal instituted by ASUU against the judgments of the National Industrial Court. However, new developments indicate that lawyers for the federal government and the academic staff union of universities are yet to reach an agreement, despite the advice to settle out of court. MJ, let me come to you. Was this dead on arrival?
Yeah, no, I want to commend the wisdom of that judge who actually admonished the two senior advocates of Nigeria, Barrister Igwe San on behalf of the federal government and Femi Falano, SAN, too, on behalf of ASUU. He said he's going to adjourn for about 24 hours to allow them to have a dialogue amongst themselves and also talk to their clients for the sake of our children who have been at home for more than 6 months, and for the sake of the lecturers and for the sake of the nation. Having said that, I think we should look beyond activism in this ASUU strike. And we should look beyond politicking. I think this thing is being politicized now. And I think it is not good for this country. At the last meeting, the Minister for Labour and Productivity, Chris Ngige, stormed out and was accusing the ASUU president of being a partisan, of politicizing the whole process. I think in view of that, that's why the judge said they should go back and see how we can have an out-of-court settlement, because it has become an embarrassing situation for schools to be shut for 6 months. And also, for the staff, for the members of ASUU, they should also understand that at a point, I'm a proud graduate of University of Ilorin. Until recently, for about 10 years, you want to send your kids to University of Ilorin because you know that you have just 4 years. But since they joined us, also, how are they doing it then? Professor Oloyede of JAMB now is also excelling in JAMB, made sure that ASUU, that Unilorin was never part of ASUU. It started from the tenure of Professor Rahim Oba. For those 10 years, Unilorin was never part of ASUU until recently. And now, I think they should also ask how Lagos State University is doing it. This Lagos University now is one of the most sought after schools in Nigeria, because we know that the day you start, you know that you have a 4-year tenure. Also, Ekiti State University has also started that. Today, they matriculated 4,000 students, 2 batches, 2021 and 2022. And I say kudos to Professor Ediolani Pekun, the VC of that university, for being able to pull out his lecturers from the ASUU strike, so that for the sake, he said he appealed to the lecturers, for the sake of our children, for the sake of the country, let us forget about, yes, we have, the demands have not been met, and you see the ASUU president saying that the schools, the universities that are pulling out of ASUU are mushroom universities. You call ASUU a mushroom university.
They misquoted him, Majid.
He actually said, I watched that program.
Okay.
Did he?
They said he described them as quacks, and he didn't say that.
Did he? I watched.
Did you hear him call them quacks?
I watched him. He said those are not schools. They said those are not schools. I watched him.
Okay.
So I know what I'm talking about. So he was trying to recount. He's taking this thing too far, and I think some people should talk to him.
No, but you should know that it's not. ASUU is not a one-man show.
Yeah, but
even if he decides today that it's not the strike to end, I've said it before. I said you do not know how ASUU is structured. That individual is not big enough
yes,
to decide by himself. He's just the face of the struggle. Correct. The same way Jega, who later became INEC chairman, was ASUU president. Anybody you put there, Fege was there. Fege also didn't give Jonathan peace, and they went on strike for not less than 6 months.
He could have said it is the choice of those universities not to go on strike. When University of Ilorin,
that's not even
the. That's
okay. Now, but they are back now.
Yeah.
When Unilorin is just one school, it's just one school. Whatever they fight for, if it's granted, those schools that refuse to be part of it, they still get to enjoy.
Of course, they will benefit.
What's it called? TED Fund is a product of ASUU strike.
Yeah.
ASUU asked for TED Fund. Today, I've seen some state universities that majority of the buildings there are TED Fund buildings.
Yeah.
I've seen federal universities. In fact, take Federal University of Lokoja, take out the TED Fund buildings. It's virtually there will be no building left.
Most of the universities are now being funded. The structures there.
But it took some people to go on strike to say we want this. Tax corporations, tax companies. And government agreed. And they are finding alternative funding for research and for even infrastructure development in the schools. What I know, and I'm not surprised that state universities are still part of this strike. A good number of them are still part of this strike, even the most prominent state universities in our country. So, because they know that, look, it is morally wrong for them to refuse to join a strike, and when the benefits come, you all take it together. The doctors who went on strike the other day, it was all of them that agreed. And when, at the end of the day, even when the minister thought that legal action would solve it, they had to abandon the legal action, and the doctors went back to work.
Yeah.
If you listen to what that man is saying, the truth about this whole matter that we don't want to accept is that both sides are wrong. If both sides are not wrong, this matter wouldn't have lasted this long. Why set up a committee that you know that once its findings are out, you will not accept? You should have given that committee condition. 2 committees you set up, they came up with their findings. In fact, the last one, for a long time, they didn't even talk about it. People kept pushing until the man granted interview and said, the FG is the problem. Now, they refuse to implement what those committees recommended. We know we are broke. But even when you are broke, at least you should be able to say certain things. We know we are broke. But when you tell a VC, okay, VC, take 60,000 extra. In today's Nigeria, how many people will agree that what you have done is significant? This is the point. I don't think my own friend, I was saying yesterday, whose daughter has stayed at home now roughly 8 months. They've been on strike since February 14. He said if they end this strike without achieving anything concrete, that he will be mad at ASUU. As far as he's concerned, they stayed at home for too long. Yes, now, Akoni, or somebody you know very well. They stayed at home for too long to now say that, okay, just go home. I mean, let's be flexible, no matter where we find ourselves. Let's be flexible. When the benefits come now, those of them who refuse to go on strike, you know, part of this, they will benefit. No. Everybody is enjoying. Magataka Dawamako built State University in Sokoto. Go and see the buildings there. They don't have money to put proper structures in universities, but they are building universities all over the place, waiting for other people to go and build infrastructure for them. And as we are saying, stop the proliferation of state universities. What is wrong about that? Today, when we want to make someone happy, what do? We go and give him a university. In fact, they are now the new thing that they are doing now. Ridiculous people. Oh, medical university for this big politician. Another one will go and set up a medical university in his own state. You are building a plethora of universities all over the place, and you don't have money to fund the ones that you have. Who does that now? Azare now, they are giving them medical university because the minister is from Azare in Bauchi State. Where is the money to fund all those universities?
All right, another development in the last 24 hours is that ASUU has now decided to sue the federal government over the registration of Congress of Nigerian Universities Academics and the Nigerian Academy of Medical and Dental. Are they on the right track?
Yeah, you know, when the federal government licensed or gave certificates to those 2 rival associations, I saw that coming. I mean, the government has a strategy of breaking ranks. The same thing it did with secondary schools. You have association of, you have ANCOPs. That's association of, I think conference of principals of secondary schools. Now, they are supposed to be the umbrella body. I mean, apart from the NUT that is known generally. But for secondary school system, now there was a time the secondary school principals were giving them problems. Now, the government broke their rank by setting up another association. I've forgotten the name of that one, but they are supporting some of them. So it's a divide and rule tactics that government will continue to employ. But you see that, now I don't even think ASUU needs to give itself any ASUUs, because it will naturally fade away by the time this strike is called off. But those 2 associations, I don't see them seeing the light of the day. All right. Just like the parallel association to ANCOPs in the secondary school system. So it happens in all the professions. All right,
Bikio, before I come to you, let's quickly take this break. I'll be right back.
The federal government, through the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, announces the availability of COVID-19 and childhood vaccines nationwide. With the disturbing increase in reported cases of COVID-19 infections across Nigeria, protect yourself and loved ones from the harmful virus by getting vaccinated. Visit the nearest public or private health facility and mass vaccination sites today to receive the first, second, or booster doses of COVID-19 vaccines. COVID-19 vaccines are given to persons 18 years and above, including pregnant women and breastfeeding mothers, while childhood vaccines are given to children from birth to 5 years for protection against polio, hepatitis, yellow fever, measles, meningitis, and other vaccines-preventable diseases. All vaccines are free, safe, and effective. For inquiries, visit www.nphcda.gov.ng or call 0700-220-1122.
This message is from NPHCDA in partnership with the Center for Democracy and Development, CDD, with support from MacArthur Foundation.
Good afternoon, Oga. Now you be the landlord.
Yes, Nami.
Oga landlord, me go need one room for this your house, so.
Okay, sure you get work where you dey do.
Yes, I be nurse.
You don't go dey owe me be that now.
Now how much be your rent, safe?
Not just 90,000 naira. Wait, oh, this guy, where you come from, Sef?
Oga, I come from Akamata.
Akamata, no talk am again. My spirit and Akamata people no dey ever join.
Oga, wetin happen now?
Come over for my compound. Na so baba thing na people sabi do for that Akamata. Come over here.
Haba, Papa, wetin this innocent girl do you now? Now people like you, they spoil Nigeria, Papa.
I think you don't see am now. My people they talk say jollof rice wey dey for bottom pot today go dey top of cooler tomorrow. As I take need you now, so you self need me. Because now one mama we get we dey Nigeria. Make we love ourselves because now only together we go fit make our country better for us and our children them. One heart plus one love equals better Nigeria. Now the Center for Democracy and Development CDD with support from the UK government, they bring in this message.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. This is journalist Hangout and I am in the studio with Babajide Kolade Otitoju and Mojid Jamil. BKO, should ASUU has ever bothered itself?
I don't think, well, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know what Zamfara saw, but I don't think Konwa will stop ASUU from doing his job. If they decide to ban ASUU, okay, maybe that could be effective, but a military government tried to ban ASUU and they lost in court.
Yeah.
They lost in court. So these things are not new. Let Konwa operate. It's just like somebody getting up today and saying that, oh, the Abdullahi faction of the APC, he disagrees with them, going on to set up his own faction of the APC. Yes, there are disgruntled people in the APC. But when you set up the faction, there will be the mainstream faction. It is that mainstream faction which Abdullahi heads that people will relate to it. At the end of the day, people will know which one is the mainstream faction.
Absolutely.
Since 2015, APC members have been quarreling with themselves in Sokoto. But every year they go into an election. Every 4 years they go into an election. INEC recognizes one faction.
Yeah.
They've not made peace as I speak. They are watching me. They know I'm not lying. They've not made peace. But in spite of that, the party goes on and there's a mainstream faction that INEC will relate with in terms of who submits candidates and all that. So this thing is not a new thing. As also the case said, they can form 1,000, they can register 1,000 bodies. The sky is wide enough. So those who want, they can do it. But for us, it's about time that government did something about the strike, and it is possible. It is possible.
All right, so let's move to the final lap of the program today. As Nigeria races to close gaps in food security and climate change toward meeting the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, by 2030, experts have said the restriction of women across the food value chain remains a major constraint to attainment of the goals of poverty eradication and prosperity for all. At a high-level forum on the SDGs organized by the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, in partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in Abuja, the forum observed that a number of factors, including gender, high imbalance in trade and foreign debt deficits in agriculture, must be addressed and actions upskilled to realize the goals. Mikhail.
I think that whatever needs to be done to allow women to participate a lot more in economic and political development has to be encouraged. That is my takeaway from what those NGOs are saying. And women constitute a little more than 50% of our population. So for that reason, it makes no sense to deny them their rights to employment, because women still get discriminated against the basis of employment. It makes no sense to stop them from contesting elections. There was a time when it was even a crime for women to even come and vote, you know. But we need to make the system good enough for our women to participate in economic development, even farming. Because in the north, for example, in some places they won't allow women to go out, you know, to their farms. In some places, women are actually the real farmers. So there is no doubt that women can do a lot more in our country if given the opportunity. I always remember Obasanjo. Obasanjo gave women opportunity during his time. And all of those women excelled in the positions that Obasanjo gave them. I don't know anyone that didn't excel, you know. Some fought against corruption. You know, I still remember Aruma Ote's video when she faced the House of Reps, you know. Many men will never find that courage that Aruma Ote demonstrated, you know, in the House of Reps that day. And so we need to give them more opportunities and make it safer for them to even take part in politics and contest elective positions. A lot of the women are better than some of the men who get into office and start stealing our money.
Absolutely. All right, MJ.
Yeah, you know, we transited from the MDGs to SDGs, the Millennium Development Goals, to Sustainable Development Goals. And what brought about this agitation actually is to ensure that we have more participation for women amongst other developmental targets by 2030. And I think one of the major things that should be taken into consideration, even by the federal government of Nigeria, is to ensure that the focal persons of that head the SDGs at the state levels are, first of all, women, so that can ensure, they enhance that participation and can give more power to women. I think Lagos is doing that, and some other states, but the percentage of states using women as the head of their SDGs, and I think the federal government is also doing well there with the appointment of the former deputy governor of Lagos, Mrs. Orelope Adefulire, as the SSA to the president on the SDGs. So I think we should encourage more of these women to take part in economic activities and not just restrict them to the other room, like Baba would say.
All right, gentlemen. Joining me now from our Abuja studio to discuss more on this is the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Public Affairs and Strategy, Office of the First Lady, Honorable Sani Zoro. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you, comrade.
All right. It's about 2 years since COVID struck and brought the world virtually on her knees. Now, since then, about 59 million Nigerians are said to be faced with insufficient daily food consumption. What role do women play in ensuring food security? Honorable, can you hear me?
Thank you very much for that. Yes. Thank you very much for that question. But before then, let me join other listeners and viewers in commending your discussions on the two issues that you took off from. First of all, the release of the remaining kidnap victims of the train disaster, and then subsequently the discussion you had on agriculture. And I want to say that women have institutional framework on these two issues that are universal in nature. For instance, when it comes to armed conflicts, women are guided by the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325, which was passed exactly 20 years ago in November, that has been adopted by all members of the Security Council and the UN General Assembly. And what did the resolution say? It provides for the inclusion of women at all stages and levels of decision-making processes as far as peace and security is concerned. So what we are talking about is the inclusion of women in peace building, peacemaking, as well as peacekeeping. And I dare say that Nigeria, that has armed conflicts in almost all its 6 geopolitical zones, need to be guided by that United Nations Security Council framework of involving women in peace building, in peacekeeping, and in peacemaking, especially post-conflict. And there are so many reasons, probably if we have time, why we should involve women in this. Secondly, as to agriculture, that is also not only universal, there are regional, there are local frameworks guided by many conventions, resolutions, protocols, compacts that talk about the involvement of women in agriculture. Now, before we talk of the Nigerian case, we can reflect on what is happening in Latin American countries, for instance. In Chile, Brazil, and so many other countries, where women's contribution to agriculture accounts for a huge percentage of the agricultural production in those countries. Even in the United States and the United Kingdom and so many European countries, you also have women contributing to agricultural value chain in no small measure. And also in our own great country, women as small farm holders, they also contribute not only at the rural economy levels, but even as big-time farmers these days. They are involved in poultry, they are involved in piggery, they are involved, in so many other aspects of agricultural production. Now, there is a need, actually, to encourage women, like, our sister has said, there is a need to involve women at managerial and other levels in order to boost food production. And I agree with her entirely that with the leadership of the SDG led by a lady, that has seen to the involvement of women in all the goals of the SDGs, or towards achieving the goals of the SDGs. I remember during the military regime also in Nigeria, when the People's Bank was led by a lady, many women, came not only to open bank accounts, but the banking habit was more inculcated, by women during that time. So wherever you have women, there is a tendency for women to feel freer to participate in such processes. Okay. Now, let me also say that on account of the resolution of the United Nations General Assembly some 43 years ago in 1979, we can all remember that there is the Convention against all forms of discrimination against women. Now, it appears to some of us that in Nigeria particularly, the voices of women have tended to be ignored over time. And I think it is very, very important to make the difference this time around. And that is what the Office of the First Lady of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, in this case, under the leadership of Dr. Aisha Muhammadu Buhari, and under the general direction of Mr. President,
now
is trying to make a change.
Just 7% of elected positions in Nigeria are occupied by women, even though they make up more than 50% of the electorate. Now, this is one of the lowest in the world. Shouldn't this be a concern?
It is out of that concern that I am here, for instance, to say that we are reviewing the strategy. I agree with you that the participation of women in politics, or especially, in appointments, political offices, in elective positions and so on, have been on the decline between 1999 to date. And that shows the quality or lack of it of the democracy we are experimenting with. The truth of the matter is that democracy is also evaluated by the extent to which it brings in social groups to participate in the democratic process. Now, when women are isolated, and like you said, they constitute no less than 52% of the Nigerian population, that is a decline, that is a setback, for the democratic process. And anywhere women are isolated, there is data, there is evidence to show, globally speaking, that democracy itself is impaired. So the strategy we are adopting, the strategy that the First Lady is also advocating for, is that let us have men who are convinced, like myself, I am convinced, that women as our mothers, women as our wives, women as sisters and our children, we need to join in championing their cause. We should not allow women alone, to keep clamoring for their justified demands over time, which have been largely ignored. Now, for instance, the First Lady is known to be the first in the history of Nigeria that went to the National Assembly. She led the wife of the Vice President as well as wives of some governors, and from the huge constituency of the civil society, to bow before the mess and ask for the 35% affirmative action that was agreed upon during the 1995 Beijing conference, and that was ignored. I consider that as very, very unfortunate, because it was an opportunity actually to jumpstart and for Nigeria actually to catch up, in fact, with other countries that have since integrated women and have made progress. I give you the example of Rwanda. Rwanda, well over a decade ago, has had 49% of its judges all women. 50% of members of its parliament have been all women. Go to Namibia, go to the Middle East these days. You will be amazed at the extent to which women have been integrated into the political process, into all political appointments in the UAE, in Saudi Arabia, in Bahrain, in Qatar, in all these countries that we go to. They are acting as ministers, they are into security, they are into immigration, they are into all facets of life. And therefore, we are not supposed to restrict women under any guise. They got talents, they have skill sets, And Nigerian women have proved to be leaders anywhere. I give you the example of Amina Mohammed, who is the #2 top civil servant in the world as Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations. There is also the admirable case of Dr. Okonjo-Iweala, who has proved her mettle right from the World Bank and then over to the WTO now. Now, they came by the diplomatic success of the executive arm of government. And we are very proud of them. If that is the case, why do we deny women participation in the National Assembly and in state houses of assembly? Now, when the two chambers at the National Assembly declined to effect constitutional and legal reforms to accommodate 35% women seats as provided for in the 1995 Beijing Declaration, we came up with a formula out of the series of conversations that the First Lady chaired. And we said, okay, if you are not giving 35%, let us start from, let us start small and then grow big. Let each state of the federation carve out one seat for women in the House of Representatives. So you will now have 37 block seats, a caucus for women. Let us start with that. And then in the Houses of Assembly, let us have 2 seats reserved for women. Lagos State has 23 members in the House of Representatives. What will it cost Lagos if it spares only 1 seat for a woman to represent the majority population in Lagos State? Kano has 24 seats. What will Kano State lose if it reserves just 1 seat for a woman, for a lady in the House of Representatives? Kano State again has 44 members in the House of Assembly. If it reserves only 2 seats, and each of the 2 states, each of the 37 states, including, with the exception of Abuja, were to reserve these 2 seats, let us experiment with the National Assembly. You have a block caucus for women. We are not talking of the Senate yet. Now, what is the argument? When it comes to discussions, either on cervical cancer or breast cancer, or it comes, there is a discussion on child mortality and maternal mortality, children's health, and so on and so forth. You will agree with me that our ladies are the ones that can articulate these matters better than men. Now, when it comes to these issues of women, peace, and conflicts too, it is men that go to war, it is men that die
Honorable Zoro.
in war, and
Honorable
it is the
Zoro.
women that suffer most because they are the...
Let
Yes,
me ask you this question because we really don't have much time. I'm sure you'll be back. There are some women who are contesting some elective positions now. In the home state of your principal, the First Lady of our country, Aisha Buhari, there is a woman contesting for governor. That's Binani. What can the president's wife do at this point to mobilize women as well as like-minded men to brush aside some of the cultural issues that people often talk about and ensure that the woman from Adama, for example, win the election and becomes governor of the state?
Is she in the APC?
Yes. In principle, Jide, in principle, we support her and we support all women that are vying for elective offices in 2023. In fact, our position is that any of the political parties that does not prioritize the issues of women, any of the parties that does not bring the issues, gender issue to the forefront should not be taken seriously. We are also of the additional position that instead of these political parties bringing divisive issues, when there are agendas that have already been set out for them at the universal, local, and regional levels, but they tend, to emphasize on things that divide Nigeria, they should not be taken seriously. Secondly, there are organizations we call socio-cultural organizations in all parts of the country. How we wish they will highlight the issues of women as they affect women that are affected or impacted, by drugs. What about women that have been impacted by tuberculosis?
We have just a minute, Honorable Zoro. Can I ask you this last question?
Yes. So what
do you think that
in principle is that we support?
Yes, I know you belong to the APC, so you are most likely going to support Binani anyway. Do you agree with Oshomole that the women are ripe to produce the president of this country?
Way back in 1983, you know that I came from the old Kano state. In 1983, the late Malam Aminu Kano picked the late Mrs. Bola Ogumbo, who is supposed to be from today's Delta, as his running mate. So if a visionary leader, a nationalist like Malam Aminu Kano, in 1983 had the vision that the future is for women. We believe that women have posted political invoices over time, and it is time for return on investment. That is our position.
All right, thank you very much, Malam Sani Zoro, SSA to the President on Public Affairs and Strategy. Thank you very much for your time with us today. Thank you. We should let you go now. Thank you. Bikio, quickly, your last statement.
Yes, Binani is the APC governorship candidate in Adamawa State. She's a woman. That's the home state of the president's wife. I know the president's wife will be doing her best to ensure that Binani becomes the first woman elected governor in our country.
All right.
So we wish the women the best of luck.
She should do better than Mama Taraba, who had a very close shave, but then lost out at the end of the day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mojijami, for coming on the program today. Thank you for sharing your perspective with us on the show today. Thank you, Bikio.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Always. All right, and thank you very much for watching. That's all on Journalist Hangouts. Join us tomorrow for another episode of the program. You can watch the repeat broadcast of this episode tonight at 11. Join us on Sunday from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. for Journalist Hangout on Sunday. We are on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Bye for now, and God bless Nigeria.
The following is a paid presentation by ShopX TV. We all know the benefits that come from eating a healthy, balanced diet, but sometimes that's not always easy, until now. ShopX TV is proud to introduce NutriBullet, the must-have kitchen item of the year. With NutriBullet, you can now easily get your daily recommended fruits and vegetables in a fast, simple, and convenient way. Not by eating them, but by drinking them. Here's how it works. First, add spinach for fiber, berries for antioxidants, and some banana for potassium. Add water and watch how the NutriBullet completely breaks everything down. Even almond nuts, cashew nuts, and tiger nuts have been completely broken down. The NutriBullet is not a blender. It's not a juicer. It's an extractor, a crusher. It's a grinder with a 600-watt motor combined with bullet cyclonic action that forces everything into its extractor blades, breaking down, pulverizing, and crushing stems, seeds, and skins, and releasing all the essential nutrients trapped inside. Tired of using blenders that are difficult to use and produce poor results? Yuck.